The Boston Red Sox will be a World Series contending team in 2026 if they make these specific moves.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part, it's all free. So make sure you tune in because Locked On is here for you every single day. And Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Happy Thursday and welcome to the show. And today's show is all about rumors. What have the Red Sox been tied to all offseason so far? And what could actually come to fruition? Because the Red Sox are one of those teams that are in an interesting but fun spot. They need to have a big offseason this year in order to truly be a contender in 2026. In 2025, it felt like they were almost there, but they were slightly behind other teams in regards to their chances of truly making a run. So now if they make the right moves this offseason, that could happen next season for the Red Sox. So here we are, and it is now November, and the winter meetings are coming up in a few short weeks, and Craig Breslow and company better have a plan for how they want to address this offseason. And that certainly does start with the starting pitching and the Red Sox truly needing a #2 starting pitcher to go behind Garrett Crochet. Joe Ryan 100% makes sense as a trade target. He's somebody that the Red Sox have been tied to this offseason as a potential player who could be moved because of the fact that the Red Sox did try to make a deal with the Twins at the trade deadline and it fell through. But now with it being the offseason, they could try to call the Twins again and resume conversation on that. This one's not necessarily a rumor when it comes to him, but more some informed speculation because of the fact that the Red Sox believe that they were close to landing him at the trade deadline. So this makes sense as a logical move for them to make. If ownership keeps the financial clamps on Craig Breslow, he'll need to get creative in improving this Red Sox team. And revisiting what he missed at the deadline is the simplest way to do that, which, first of all, ownership should not be restricting Craig Breslow financially. They need to just man up and pay what it's going to take to get a true #2 starting pitcher. And whether that's via trade or via free agency, it's going to have to happen. So the financial clamps that potentially could be placed on Breslow could restrict the type of move in particular that he does make. But with Joe Ryan in particular, he's a guy who makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox because while he's not at the same level as Garrett Crochet, he certainly would slot in very well as that team's #2 starting pitcher. He made his first All-Star team last season, finishing the year with a 3.42 ERA and a 1.035 whip in 30 starts. With whip, again, has to do with walks plus hits given up. So definitely very effective, not as effective as Crochet in that regard, but definitely a pitcher who could do big things for this Boston Red Sox team. He posted a .985 whip in 135 innings in 2024. So a little bit more effective a season before, but I don't suspect that he's going to take this drastic decline in 2026 to the point where he wouldn't still be reliable as a #2 starter. And he has 2 seasons left under team control. So he's the perfect candidate to receive a pre-free agency contract extension, much like how the Red Sox handled Crochet after they acquired him via trade last offseason. So with having Crochet, who signed through 2031, and Brayan Bello signed through 2029 with an option for 2030, and then adding Joe Ryan into the mix there for years to come, that makes a very solid rotation. If you have Crochet as the 1, Ryan as the 2, and Bello as the 3, that would be really enticing. And there's no reason why the front office can't make that happen if that's what they really want. Now, given that Joe Ryan is a pitcher who would have to make that transition from being in a smaller market like the Twins to coming to Boston, at least if he were to struggle a little bit with that transition, the Red Sox do have other strong starting pitching. It's not like they would be relying on him to be their ace because of the fact that they have Garrett Crochet. They would put Joe Ryan in there as the guy behind him. So therefore, then they could have Crochet as the 1 and Ryan as the number 2. So that way, then he's not being thrown into the fire, being expected to be an ace when it may take some getting used to for him from being the guy who can be this stud for the Boston Red Sox if he struggles a little bit with making that transition to Boston. So that's why I like that combination a lot, is he complements Crochet as the number 2. And at the trade deadline, the Red Sox were unwilling to part with Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. They wanted to keep both of them when they ended up talking with the Twins about Joe Ryan. But with the fact that their outfield has an overload right now, which I have talked about extensively on this show, between Duran, Abreu, Ceddanne Rafaela, and Roman Anthony, there shouldn't be a holdup now when engaging the Twins in trade talks. And at the deadline, I kind of saw their perspective a little bit more of, they didn't want to break up the chemistry that the team had. They felt like with the flow, it made sense to keep everybody. But now that it's the offseason, it makes a lot of sense to move one of their outfielders. And if the Twins are interested in an outfielder, this is the perfect time to make that type of trade. So Joe Ryan, when it comes to the Boston Red Sox, definitely makes a lot of sense and is probably the most realistic, quote unquote, rumor that's out there. But also, again, when it comes to more other rumors that are going around, Freddy Peralta, who I talked about on the show recently, is another interesting fit for the Red Sox, because the Milwaukee Brewers are coming off their best regular season ever, winning 97 games and the division in 2025. So they may not be completely motivated to actually offload talent. And on the flip side of that, they did trade away Corbin Burnes and Devin Williams when they were a year away from free agency, noting that the fact that they were listening to offers on free agents is kind of in their DNA. So with the fact that he is close to hitting free agency, it's not far-fetched to feel like they might trade him. So with the Red Sox being a possibility for him, because that could be a guy who would clearly boost the rotation as well. And it's something for the Red Sox certainly should consider. So you think about Garrett Crochet being here and what they've truly been able to build with this team. He could be the missing piece that they need to be taken seriously as a contender. They have a really good farm system. They could give up pieces, and also obviously moving an outfielder, maybe even an infielder like Triston Casas, who I talked about on the show recently. Now, Peralta's 29 years old, which is the same age as Joe Ryan. Ironically enough, they were born one day apart. And he's also coming off of an all-star season in 2025 when he went 17-6 with a 2.70 ERA and a 1.075 whip, striking out 204 batters in 176.2 innings. He also did make an all-star team in 2021 when he posted a 2.81 ERA as well as a 0.970 whip in a breakout season for Milwaukee. So from a production standpoint, he could arguably be a little bit more productive and be a guy who could pitch even stronger out of the Red Sox rotation than Joe Ryan could. But if Breslow does have the financial restrictions that are limiting him this offseason, it comes down to what pitcher they could probably get on the cheapest type of deal. And Peralta might make more sense over Ryan in that regard, because he has one fewer year of team control and significantly more MLB experience. So he'll be due a bigger payday than Ryan will be. So if that were the case, where if the Red Sox ownership was to not really show commitment to spending a lot of money on extending a pitcher, then they might want to stick more with Joe Ryan. But on the other hand, when it comes to a trade package, a lesser package could potentially land Peralta because of all of those circumstances. And he could also provide a major boost to the rotation in the short term. So essentially, when it comes to these two pitchers, it's going to be a matter of, do they value more having to give up less of a package and then risking potentially losing that pitcher to free agency again if they don't want to pay him because he's going to cost more money in Peralta? Or are they willing to give up more from a player capital perspective to get a guy like Joe Ryan and then extend him because he probably would be cheaper later on? So that's really what it comes down to when it comes to the Red Sox making that decision. Either one would slot in very nicely to the Red Sox rotation and be somebody who could fit in very well behind Garrett Crochet and be a guy that the Red Sox feel like they can go to and rely on in a playoff series, because that was a big issue that they had in this past season. Was outside of Garrett Crochet, they didn't really have a lot of options in terms of truly reliable starting pitching. And that's no disrespect to guys like Lucas Giolito or Brian Bayo, but Giolito ended up getting hurt. Bayo had a rough September, so it was hard to really feel on board and confident with him and going into the postseason in 2025. So the question's going to be whether you put Joe Ryan or Freddy Peralta in there, or maybe even another pitcher that hasn't been thought of as heavily. It needs to be a guy who can truly fill in that number 2 role. And the Red Sox certainly can make that happen with their prospect capital, and they need to be willing to be open to an extension to this pitcher like they did with Garrett Crochet. And coming up, they know they also need a middle of the order bat. So what are the rumors saying about the Red Sox in regards to that? If you like sports betting or you're just trying to get into it, FanDuel is no doubt the place for you, especially with the NBA being back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You'll make lots of money with FanDuel, I promise. So make sure that you download that today. And also, thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. It truly could not happen without any of you loyal listeners. So we really do appreciate that. And after you tune into Locked On Red Sox every day, make sure you next check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, as he will break down and give you the latest in all things going on around the league so that you can make sure that you're caught up on all these trade rumors and free agency and who the Red Sox realistically have the best shot of getting. So make sure that you check out that show on any podcast platform after you finish listening to Locked On Red Sox. What will the Red Sox offseason entail? That is the big question that people have been asking. And it's no mystery that the Red Sox need to make some big moves this offseason in order to get themselves into true World Series contention. And obviously that starts with starting pitching, which there are plenty of options on the starting pitching market, and the Red Sox just need to make that happen. But they also are rumored to be looking for an impactful middle of the lineup bat. So this is an area that they have needed since they traded away Rafael Devers. Yes, they have Trevor Story, who had a good offensive season. Yes, they have Wilyer Abreu, who led the team in home runs. And yes, they have Roman Anthony, who is going to be a superstar. And also they had Alex Bregman in 2025, but he declined a lot after his injury compared to how he was hitting before his injury. So there's a lack of power in this lineup right now. So Craig Breslow acknowledged this. He knows that they had one of the best power bats in the entire sport, Endeavors, but they decided to trade him. And then now they understand that they need to make up for what ultimately was a mistake in terms of the return. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have traded Devers. The behind the scenes circumstances is something that we won't all fully understand, and things could have been going on there that we don't really know about. But it's more the return for Devers or the lack thereof. The biggest part of the return in their eyes is the fact that San Francisco decided to take on the rest of his salary. That's a big thing in all of this. And that's something that the Red Sox feel is notable and important in this whole thing. But the players that they got in return don't necessarily match the caliber of player that they had in Devers. So now they have some options as to who could fill that need. Pete Alonso is somebody the Red Sox are really eyeing. He could help fill the first base black hole that has absolutely plagued the Red Sox for a few years now. And Triston Casas truly felt like he was the first baseman of the future, but then unfortunately he suffered a season-ending injury back in May, and he missed a lot of the 2024 season with injury. So now there's a question about his durability, whether he's able to stay on the field, and if he is able to stay on the field, how productive he can truly be, because when he was out there, he was struggling at the plate in 2025 in that first month of the season before he went down with his injury. So that again also becomes a question of, okay, where do we go from here now that Casas is down? And even when he does come back, is he definitely going to be the guy moving forward for the future? We don't really know. So Pete Alonso is a guy who could fit that bill because he could be a steady first baseman that the Red Sox could acquire, who could also provide some power offensively, because the Red Sox need that, because they weren't able to hit home runs at a super high level compared to some other teams and what they were able to do. So that becomes another question is, are the Red Sox going to feel confident enough that if they bring in Pete Alonso, they could address the home run problem and also have him as a first baseman of the future? It's definitely something to think about. Kyle Schwarber is another name. He was a fan favorite in Boston during his brief stint in 2021 when the Red Sox acquired him to make a playoff push essentially late in the year. But he would essentially be a DH. And locking in on a DH at top dollar for a roster that right now at this moment seemingly has a DH with Yoshida, who can't really play the field, doesn't really seem like the likeliest path. Kyle Schwarber would be a game changer for the Red Sox, but for one, the Phillies are probably going to go hard after him in the offseason to try to bring him back. And why wouldn't they? Because he's such a key part of that team. So I would imagine that they would make a push to get him back in a Phillies uniform. And then on the other side of that, he would be a fit for Boston because then they could play him primarily as the DH and kind of keep Yoshida as a backup option in case somebody gets hurt or needs an off day. But I don't know that they would want to commit to the type of contract that Kyle Schwarber would be demanding and would require if they're already paying Yoshida what they're paying him. And the Yoshida situation, again, it goes to show that's kind of bringing down the Red Sox a little bit because of the fact that they're spending so much money on him and he isn't producing at the level in which they need him to be producing at. So that's definitely a challenge of, all right, well, how do we handle this now from here? So it is looking or seeming like Pete Alonso feels like a more likely option because then at least he can play first base or DH when needed. Whereas with Kyle Schwarber, it would feel like they would be bringing him in because he's a DH. And then it would be a question of what they do with Yoshida. So they definitely should be eyeing Pete Alonso. And free agent shortstop Bo Bichette primarily batted leadoff for the Blue Jays, but he did mash in his 40 starts in the cleanup spot, batting .372 with a 1.008 OPS. Even though Trevor Story opted into his deal, he has already spent a year at second base with the Red Sox and could possibly do so again if the Red Sox opted to pursue Bichette which is definitely another option. I know that the Blue Jays are going to go hard after him to bring him back. I also know that the Dodgers are a team that's interested, of course, to nobody's surprise. But Bichette could fit in nicely because they could again move Trevor Story back to second base and put Bichette at shortstop. Then they feel like they're getting another power back and then figure out what they want to do with Marcelo Meyer. At that point, if they feel like Bo Bichette is going to be the guy at shortstop and Trevor Story is going to be the guy at second base, if Marcelo Meyer's healthy, and if they decide not to trade him, because keep in mind, they have trade pieces to be able to make things happen this offseason. Whether that happens with Marcelo is still to be determined. But another player where there's still a big mystery about him is Alex Bregman. And things are pretty quiet with him. After he opted out of his deal with the Red Sox, really not much at all has come to fruition in terms of teams that may pursue him in free agency. He's projected to land a 5-year, $160 million deal, despite the fact that he'll be 32 on opening day, and he missed significant time last year with a quad injury that just really never actually healed. He ended up opting out of 2 years at $40 million per season. So basically gave up 40 mil for the next 2 years each because he feels like he can land a bigger deal in free agency, which I'm not confident that he can. But much like last year, it would seem as though his market may take a while to materialize. And he did prove last year that he's willing to wait until the last minute to make up his mind because it was late when he decided to sign with the Red Sox. So I could see a similar thing happening. But considering Craig Breslow's comment about the need for impactful middle of the order bats, I would definitely be inclined to feel like the Red Sox would be interested in keeping Bregman in the fold. He batted .299 with a .938 OPS over 51 games before suffering his injury, hitting 17 doubles and 11 home runs with 35 RBIs. That then dropped to a .250 average and .724 OPS in 63 games after returning from his injury. So assuming that his quad heals completely in the offseason, he could be part of the Red Sox solution in the middle of the order, but the price would have to drop significantly, most likely, in order for that to continue, because it doesn't seem like the Red Sox are willing to offer him this major long-term deal. I think if they were to bring him back, it would have to be a similar deal to what he got, where they're maybe paying him a lot of money, but it's only for a couple of years, so that he could be the short-term solution at third base. I don't think the Red Sox are really interested in the idea of committing to a longer 4 to 5 year deal with Alex Bregman. And as they shouldn't, at this point in his career, with his age and where he's at, and also with the decline that he showed in the last couple months of the season, I wouldn't want to bring him back on a 5 or 6 year deal, but I would want to bring him back into the fold for the next couple of years because of his leadership and how good he was as a mentor to a lot of the younger players on this team, and the fact that these guys look up to him. That means a lot, and that's really telling. And that's the type of guy you want to have around the clubhouse, a guy who can really walk the younger guys through the process of making it in Major League Baseball and finding their identity and putting aside the pressure of having to perform at the highest level and making sure that they feel validated and that they know that they'll continue to improve if they can take away the pressure that's on them. So having him around and his presence is really good for the next couple of years, but I wouldn't recommend giving him a long-term deal. So I'm sure the Red Sox will be in the mix, and they understand that Bregman would be a huge loss. But just like last year, they would have to try to get his price down, and teams would have to be unwilling to give him a longer term deal, likely, in order for that to happen. So the Bregman situation is an interesting thing. But coming up, what are some other rumors associated with the Red Sox this offseason? Don't forget that you can subscribe to Locked On Red Sox on any podcast platform, including YouTube. It is here Monday through Friday, discussing the latest in all things Boston Red Sox. And you can follow the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. You can follow me on Twitter at Gabby Maljanian, or me on Instagram at Gabby_Maljanian10, where I'm always available to talk Red Sox as well. So you can connect with other Red Sox fans and be able to continue to stay up to date with all the episodes. So make sure that you tune in every single day still, even throughout the off season. And speaking of the offseason, this certainly is going to be a big one for the Boston Red Sox. They need to go out and they need to make big moves in order to solidify themselves as World Series contenders. And if they truly go out and they get a number 2 starting pitcher and they go out and get 1 or 2 power bats to put a big oomph in the lineup, they can be a World Series contending team. They faced quite a few injuries over the course of the 2025 season, and they still were competitive. They still made the playoffs, and they still showed a lot of potential. So the fact that they were able to go out and do that, and they were able to show that they have the potential, means you have to continue to capitalize on that. It would be incredibly disappointing if the Red Sox kind of stand pat this offseason and they don't make moves that they should be making to improve the team when they have the capability of being a true World Series contending team. So the whole thing now is that they need to figure out what those moves are going to look like. So if the Red Sox do feel like they're in a good spot to where they can start to make trades, there's a team called the Kansas City Royals that are specifically eyeing the Red Sox outfielders. That is another rumor from this offseason. And the Royals have one of the best all-around players in baseball in Bobby Witt Jr. They also have an elite young third baseman in Maikel Garcia. But after that, the lineup is lacking. So they definitely are looking to add to their outfield via trade. Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger are free agents, but probably a little bit too expensive for the Royals. They'll probably get outbid on types of guys like that. But the Red Sox are a potential fit because of the fact that the Royals are interested in outfielders, and the Red Sox definitely have outfielders that are tradable. While they do have an abundance of outfielders, they also can really afford to only trade one of them away. So that's why they'll be selective when it comes to maximizing the return of whoever it is they opt to send away, which most likely to me feels like it's going to be Jarren Duran. Because they know that they need to hang on to their other outfielders, they're going to be picky about what the return is when they shop him, which is good for the Red Sox and could work to their advantage. But the Red Sox priority in trading away one of their outfielders would most likely be in trying to land a frontline starter. And if the Royals were to try to call the Red Sox and persuade them to give them one of their outfielders, they would have to absolutely wow the Red Sox, probably with prospect talent, because from a positional player standpoint, there isn't really anybody that the Royals could give the Red Sox right now that could make that impact that they're looking for. So it would likely be a prospect type of trade. And I don't think the Red Sox would be willing to necessarily settle for that when it comes to trading an outfielder. So the chances of those two teams making a trade and actually going through, it's unlikely to happen because the Red Sox probably wouldn't really be able to find a scenario where it makes sense for them. So the Royals may not be a fit, but regardless, the Red Sox do feel like one of their outfielders is going to be moved, and Jarren Duran feels like he's the odd man out. And the Red Sox as an organization believe that they could use an upgrade over him, and that him getting a fresh start could be really helpful for him. So a lot of people would be surprised if he's in Fort Myers with the Boston Red Sox to start spring training. He was an all-star in 2024, leading the league in doubles with 48 and triples with 14, while posting an 834 OPS. He was named MVP of the All-Star game and finished 8th in AL MVP voting that year, but he understandably did take a step backward in 2025, but was still a productive player with a 774 OPS and an American League leading 13 triples. So at 29 years old, he's still in his prime right now, which does make him an appealing addition for a team that is in need of a corner outfielder and a lefty bat. And the Red Sox wouldn't feel like they're giving up somebody who would be a drastic difference to the team because they have Rafaela, who's 25, Abreu, who's 26, and Anthony, who's 21 in the outfield, all young guys. So therefore, they are pretty set for the future in the outfield without him. So the chances of him being moved are pretty high. The question is just to where, because the Red Sox are probably going to focus on teams that are looking for a talented outfielder who has versatility that can actually give up frontline starting pitching, because there's no doubt about the fact that that should be what the Red Sox are targeting in the return, is a frontline starting pitcher. So if they can get on the phone with teams who can give that up, that likely would be the landing spot for Duran. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, but lots of rumors going around. In summary, if the Red Sox make a couple big moves, one being for a number 2 starting pitcher and one being for a middle of the order power bat, those can help get them to World Series contention. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do, and hopefully they do maximize on that. Based on what Craig Breslow has said, it seems like he's ready for that and he's ready to make those types of moves this offseason, but it can be all talk, and I'll believe it when I see it. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, but thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Red Sox and always making it your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian. Keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.